here. There's not a lot in way of official theories. There was not a lot of speculation from law enforcement. So Joe and I'll go into what we think will happen, but I'm just going to read some statements from the wives of the two gentlemen that went missing. So, wife of Kim, she believes a microburst hit the lake that September day, creating treacherous weather conditions that would have tested the limits of any legends, let alone two men with aging bodies. And she goes on to say, since her husband's disappearance, Becky Crumbo has gotten several messages and phone calls from people who knew him well, convinced that something sinister happened to him, she said. But, she goes on to say that she doesn't think it was something, like wrong place, wrong time. I can totally see a weather-related incident causing this. The wife of Mark has a little bit different take on what she thinks happened. So Karen Lowry, who's the wife of Mark O'Neill, said in a newspaper statement, she wrote, we're just reeling at this, she said, expressing what her family is going through. She's heard a lot of different theories about the accident, but her gut feeling is that the brothers were caught in something very ugly or caught off guard. She said she knows her husband would have never left his brother under any but the most dire circumstances. I feel they were trying to help each other, she said. So I think she is not ruling out a weather-related incident, but I think, and in a couple other statements, it kind of sounded like she was hinting at maybe there was something more to this than just a weather accident.
Okay.
But so what do you think happened? We know what happened to Mark.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened to both, and unfortunately, they didn't find them. So I look at it as if they got hit with big winds, and they said that lake experiences big wind gusts, which can make big waves, and in a canoe or kayak, based on the image we saw, it was packed of stuff, and we've been in boundary waters.
Yeah,
you can rock a lot. So if you have big enough waves, you're going to capsize. In water that's that cold, if they're not dressed appropriately, they might not. And at their age,
even you get sprayed. With that cold water.
Yeah. That's actually a great point. What if they're already kind of cold?
Yeah.
And then you add that in.
Yep.
They're that old. He's had shoulder replacement, things like that. So you're going to start seizing up.
Yeah.
Even if you're healthy, you're going to start slowing down, seizing up. So I think of what happens to a canoe or a kayak in high winds if you're not in it.
Yeah.
It goes away fast.
Yeah.
You cannot swim after it. I've seen it happen. So if they're in that cold water
out in the middle of the
lake, it could have been a thing where they capsize and the canoe gets away from them. So they have to swim to shore. If they're far enough ashore, they may not have had enough time.
Yeah.
I think the simplest explanation that makes the absolute most sense is, and we have proof that it happened to at least one of them.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I think they just did not recover his body.
Yeah. A lake of that size, they probably obviously weren't able to sonar the entire bottom with limited resources. I mean, if you brought in like the U.S. Navy, he's in the bottom of the lake.
And again, we don't want to sound morbid. This is just going over what's most likely. If you sonar the whole lake and he's down there and there's like a rock or something too, maybe it doesn't even look like a body. So how are they going to see? Like you said, it's a huge lake. They can't, in order to see it, they'd probably have to dive down over the whole thing. And it's just not going to happen.
It's not, they don't have the resources to do that. I agree with you, Joe. I think they probably both got caught in some wicked weather, and
it could have just been wind.
Could have been just wind.
It didn't even have to be like a storm. It could have been gust of wind that made waves big enough to capsize them.
And the lake does drain out a river. So theoretically, because you wonder, like, all right, well, what happened to his gear?
Mm-hmm.
Like some of his gear might have sunk.
Sure.
But the kayak isn't going to sink, but that could have, maybe it floated out of the lake down the river, and, maybe someone found it and just like, oh, free kayak, or who knows what happened to it. But I think sadly, the same thing happened to Mark. And that's the thing. You can be the most experienced person out in the wilderness and just get caught in the wrong situation at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in the boundary waters with some, strong winds, and you got to paddle into the wind to keep the waves from tipping you over, and it's
Yeah,
exhausting.
absolutely.
I mean, it's absolutely exhausting for someone. I was in my late 20s doing it, and I was dying. I mean, I can't imagine, getting stuck, imagine a microburst,
Yeah.
60, 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds. I mean,
Yeah, that would capsize you
Yeah.
very easily,
Yeah.
especially if you have gear loaded in there.
Yeah. So I think sadly this one is pretty cut and dry. I thought it was important to cover this case just because, like I said in the beginning, that we're getting close to Veterans Day, and Kim was a very distinguished U.S. military veteran that served in Vietnam. So I think important case to cover, because I never even heard about this in the news. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this was recommended by a listener. Probably should have done that in the beginning, but if she's still listening all the way to the end, thank you to.
Yeah, she's in the middle of writing a bad review right now.
Thank you to Angie Helmick Walter for recommending this to us in June of 2022. So
yeah, don't write the bad review now, because we did what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, we apologize. But Joe, I don't know, you have anything else to add?
No, I think that is it.